In today's lecture, we'll be studying what are user-defined functions in C. The main objectives of today's lecture is to learn what is a function, what are the need for user-defined functions, which are the elements of functions, and finally we'll be studying about the categories of functions. Let me first tell you what a function is. Function is nothing but it is a group of statements of instructions for doing a particular task under a common name. There are two types of functions: library functions and user-defined functions. What we have been using till now are library functions. See, we have used printf, scanf, then we have used some functions like sqrt, cos, log. These functions are library functions. We do not have to take any care of writing these types of functions. They are already available in the library, and whenever we want to use these types of functions, we'll just be calling these functions. Now, main is a user-defined functions. What we do is, for our program that we want to execute, we write the main function. So the function of main we are writing on our own. So it is what? It is a user-defined functions. Now, when we want to create short functions, for suppose if I want to add two numbers, and I want to create a function of my own called add numbers. These types of functions are user-defined functions. We will be writing the code on our own, and whenever we want to use that code, we'll just be simply calling that function. So these are the main categories of functions: library functions and user-defined functions. Now let me tell you the need for using user-defined functions, its advantages / needs. Okay, so first of all, we have studied that C is a top-down approach. Functions in C helps us to carry out top-down approach. We have a main program and we have n number of modules in our program. So each function represents a module, and from the main we'll be calling these functions, and hence the C follows top-down approach. The next advantage of using functions is the length of our source code. If we want to carry out the same set of instructions, same task again and again in my program, what we will do is we will not just write the code again and again. Instead of that, for that set of instructions, we'll be defining a function, and hence whenever we want to use that thing, we'll just be calling the function. Because of this, the length of source program decreases. Next is, it is easy to locate and isolate a faulty function for further investigations. So fault checking becomes easy. How? What we will do is, suppose in my program of making a calculator, if I have made functions add, subtract, multiplication, division, if I find that my program is giving me error in the add task, what I need to do is, I'll just be checking the add function which I had created. Hence, I am aware that the problem is with the add task. So only checking the add function will quickly help me to solve that problem. So because of making functions, the task of checking errors becomes easy. Next is what? A function may be used by many other programs. Next advantage is, the function can be used by many other programs. If I have created one function, now if I want to carry out the same task in some other program, then also including that library file, I can call the function which I have already created. So this helps me to reuse the instructions which I have already written. So these are the basic advantages of functions. Now let us see what is this function, how to create a function, what are the important elements of a function. Okay, so if you want to use functions, you should be knowing three main elements of it. First is function definition, then function call, and function declaration, also known as function prototype. Let us first discuss about function definition. The actual implementation of the function is demonstrated through the definition. Whatever is the body of the function is mentioned is written through the function definition. So first of all, let's see what is the syntax of writing a function. First you will be writing the return type, the type of data that the function is returning. Then the function name, and inside the brackets the list of arguments. After that, inside the body of the function you will be having first the local variable declaration, then the steps executable statements, and finally the return statement. So this is the body of the function that we want to make. The syntax. The topmost line, the line that we have written, return type, function name, list of arguments, this is known as function header. It consists of three parts: the function type, also known as return type, function name, and the formal parameter list. Note that a semicolon is not used at the end of the function header. The statements which we write inside the body will end with a semicolon. The formal parameter list declares the variables, list of arguments what we have written. It declares the variables that will receive the data sent by the calling program. And finally, the function body, it consists of local declarations that specify the variables needed by the function statements that perform the task of the function, and finally a return statement that returns the value evaluated by the function. So this is the function body. Now return values and the type. See, if a function returns an integer value, in the return type we'll be writing int. If the function returns a float value, so we'll be writing float over there. Let us see an example first. If I want to multiply two numbers, what I write is integer. Suppose the name of the function is mul. Then the arguments that I'm passing is I want to multiply two numbers, so I'll have to list out two variables over here. So these are my arguments, integer x, integer y. Then we have the local variable declaration. Suppose integer product is my local variable. So what we will do is, what is the executable statement? So executable statement is product is equals to x into y. So finally the result is calculated in the local variable product. Now what I need to do is I want to return this product to the calling statement. So this is how we design a function. This is my function definition. Now we can also write directly over here return x into y, but instead of that what we are doing is we have declared a local variable, we are assigning value to that variable, and then finally we are returning that variable. So this is a function definition. Next is function call. Wherever you want to use the function that you have made, you will be calling that function through a function call. A function can be called by simply using the function name followed by the list of arguments these are the actual parameters. Earlier in the definition what we specified were the formal arguments, formal parameters. So here if I want to call the function which I have created earlier, suppose this multiplication function, inside my main what I'll do is I'll simply call that function. This is my main. I have a variable called suppose integer y. Then I'll be writing y equals to, I'll be calling this function mul, and I'll pass any values which I want to calculate the multiplication of. So what will happen is whenever I write this statement, your function is called. And finally, this mul function is called where the value 4 gets copied to the variable x, 5 is copied to variable y, product is equal to 4 into 5 which is 20, and when you write return product, 20 is returned to variable y. So here the value of y is 20, so we'll be printing it. So the result would be printed through y. So this is how what we did is this is my function call. Next is what? Function declaration. See, what we do is if I want to use variables in my program, suppose I want to add two numbers, what you do is you declare the variables integer a, b, c, then you write c equals to a plus b. So if you want to use any type of variable in your program, first you need to tell the compiler that these types of variables are going to come in my program. You need to reserve you need to reserve memory for these variables. So here the same thing applies for function. You need to tell to the compiler that a function with the following name, this return type, and these many arguments is going to come in my program. So you need to declare this function using at the top. So where will you be declaring it? The declaration comes before main, after your include files. You'll be specifying the prototype. So all functions in C program must be declared before they are invoked. A function declaration consists of 4 parts: function return type, function name, parameter list, and finally terminating semicolon. How we will be writing this? We'll be writing it, we'll be declaring it like this. Here you see in function header there is no semicolon, whereas wherever we are declaring a function, we will be declaring it with the semicolon. So here for the function that we created, multiplication, there if I want to create a prototype for that function, what I will be writing is integer name of my function. My function was returning integer, so in return type I mentioned integer, then name of the function is mul, and then the parameter list int m comma int n. Note that the variable name m and n over here are optional. It's okay if you do not specify the variables names over here. If you just write integer comma integer, it's okay, and finally a semicolon. So this is what this is function declaration. Next is, in the next lecture we'll see some more examples of functions and the categories of functions. Functions having no return type, no arguments, function having argument but no return type, function having no argument but return type, and function having both arguments as well as return type. So in this lecture we'll not be doing that, we'll be continuing that in the next lecture.